Shout out to MGTOW5513 for sending me this story. Now, if y'all don't remember who this guy is, this is Christopher Hasson. And he was that white supremacist person who, I think he was a Coast Guard worker. And he planned on committing a domestic terrorist attack I think it was in the Silver Spring area, or he was from Silver Spring, and he was planning on doing some kind of domestic terrorism attack somewhere in the DMV area. Now it should be bringing you up to speed. It happened a couple years ago. But anyway, he was just recently sentenced to 13 years in prison for what he attempted to do. I don't know if Professor Black Truth is going to come across this video or not. But if he does, and he happens to be watching, I would like to tell him that when he made that statement, and it was a very prophetic statement that he made, that white supremacists and racists, whenever they do get an opportunity to go to jail, is usually between the ranges of 10 to 15 years. And I have done so many stories involving races recently. And when they go to jail, it falls between that 10 and 15 year mark. I have not come across one in a while that has exceeded, say, 20, maybe even 30 years in a while. With the exception, of course, of Dylan Roof, but that was back in 2015. But let me go ahead and get into it. A U.S. Coast Guard officer accused of stockpiling weapons and compiling a hit list of government and media figures was sentenced Friday to 13 years in prison, although he should have got way more considering who he was going after. Like, he was going after some heavy political figures, and I think most of them or all of them were Democrats. Federal prosecutors said Lieutenant Christopher Hasson was inspired by racist murder cases and intended to exact retributions on minorities and those he considered to be traitors. If not for the actions of law enforcement, said U.S. Attorney Robert Hur, we will now be counting bodies of the defendant's victims instead of years of the defendant's prison time. Investigators said they considered Hasson a domestic terrorist, but there are no such charges in the federal system. For that reason, the case was an example of the difficulty prosecutors face when law enforcement action may have prevented potential attacks. All the more reason why they should put that on the books. His lawyers, however, said the government vastly overstated the threat. Of course, they're going to come out there and vouch for him. But did they not see the picture when he had all those weapons, like literally stacked up, like he was ready to go into a one-man war? There is little, if any, doubt he was planning a mass casualty assault to further his white nationalist views, said U.S. District Court Judge George Hazel. But Hazel said Hasson is not being sentenced for his views. He's being sentenced for the actions he was planning. Now, it's very important that you understand context. They said he was not being sentenced for his views, but sentenced for the actions of which he was planning, which means they were not going to tack on or had any plan to tack on a hate crime charge to this man. Let me say that again. They were not going to, nor did they plan on tacking on a hate crime charge against this man, even though he has white supremacist views. That's why they came out and said we were not getting him for his views. We were getting on what he planned to do. Because for some reason, it's almost like it's taboo to hit anybody with a hate crime charge unless they, are non-white. Hasson, age 50 of Silver Spring, Maryland, pleaded guilty last October to charges of illegally buying prescription painkillers and amassing an arsenal of 15 firearms and 2 illegal gun silencers. As a drug abuser, he was not legally entitled to possess the guns. The FBI said he also had over 1,000 rounds of ammunition for those weapons. When Hasson was arrested nearly a year ago, investigators found documents at his apartment in which he described himself as being a white nationalist for more than 30 years. The FBI said he drafted a letter of a neo-Nazi leader advocating focused violence to establish a white homeland. Investigators said he was a follower of the Anders Behring Breivik, the far-right nationalist who killed 77 people in 2 coordinated attacks in Norway 2011. Court documents said he spent roughly $12,000 over a 3-year period to equip himself with knives, ammunition, body armor, and smoke grenades. He also studied sniper techniques and investigated ways to make bullet fragments untraceable. The FBI said Hasson compiled a computer spreadsheet hit list with the names of 13 members of Congress, including House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer, and 6 news media figures, including Joe Scarborough of MSNBC and Chris Cuomo of CNN. Just before the sentence was pronounced, Hasson addressed the court. "I apologize for losing your trust and for the things that I wrote." Hasson's public defender said the appropriate sentence for what they described as a little more than a run-of-the-mill firearms possession case was time served in jail and 3 years of supervised release. His criminal conduct, they said, was the result of his addiction to prescription opioids. They described him as a deeply ashamed and said a clinical psychologist from Canada who examined Hasson concluded that he did not intend to commit dangerous acts and was not a domestic terrorist. "We hope this analysis," his lawyer said in the pre-sentence court filing, "puts to rest for once and for all the unsubstantiated allegations that the government has leveled." I hate lawyers sometimes. I really do. With the exception of, Johnny Cochran. But it's amazing the lies that they will put out there to try to protect this man. So, of course, yet again, sorry about that. I missed and paused by mistake. But yet again, they are blaming it on prescription drugs and all types of other things. I'm surprised they didn't come with the mental illness card. But the fact of the matter is this guy had a hit list. He had a stockpile of weapons. He spent $12,000 over a couple-year period just to stockpile what he was planning on doing. The thing that should have got them was, one, him being a white nationalist for over 30 years, and the fact he had a hit list. I mean, are we alone in here? Like, is logic lost right now? But see, that's their job. They have to do whatever they can to try to prove that he's innocent. Well, it didn't work because his ass is going to jail for 13 years, which in my opinion should have been a whole lot more. But see, the thing is, they would have needed for a casualty to happen in order for him to get those years. Now, it says he's 50, which means he'll be out when he's 63. Unless, of course, something happens to him before then, of course, he'll be coming out lifeless. But it is what it is. Y'all let me know what y'all think about this down in the comments. Like, share, subscribe if you haven't done so already. Follow me on Twitter, have your notifications turned on, and I will talk to you in the next one.